how has your faith, especially in God, built as you continue this creative journey of stories that you believe God has laid on your heart to produce? Because you guys, as you said, you guys had failed Kickstarters. You
Yes.
guys started really excited, and no one showed up. And after the entire
Yes.
Kickstarter run, it didn't get funded, and you guys have to like go back again.
So yeah, I've been saying my whole life that God wanted me to do this. When I have failures or when I have stress or when I have just hurdles and you start thinking, am I not supposed to be doing this? I've heard some of my Christian friends saying, maybe God's saying that this is not what I need to be doing. Maybe because doors haven't opened, therefore I shouldn't be doing this. There's other people saying that. And I'm always the opposite. I say, yeah, but you know, just because you have hurdles doesn't mean that's God saying, don't do this. The fourth man in the fire in the furnace, he didn't, God didn't save them from going in the furnace. He didn't stop them from being tied up. He didn't stop them from being pushed in. He didn't stop them from the door being closed, but he was there with them in the fire. So God's with you as you go through the struggles. He doesn't stop the struggles from happening.
Alright, guys, welcome back to the 13th installment of the Kedoshim Initiative Podcast. Today we are here with the one and only Joe Spicer, the owner over at Starcross Comics and the creator for Biblical Proportions and God. Joe, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
You guys, I'm excited to have Joe on because it's been back and forth in with him over DMs for a year since I discovered Starcross and started fangirling over Evan David's books into getting into multiple different. It's some of our DMs is funny because sometimes you're sending me like a series to cover and I already like bought all 5 issues, have it on the content cadence and script. I'm like, oh bro, that video is already scripted. It just probably wouldn't come out for the next 6 months because of the one comic a week content cadence. But I already that video is
That's
already
funny.
scripted. And then yeah, because even
That's
like
great.
with biblical proportions the other day, biblical proportions issue 2, I asked you like what other stuff you think I could within the Starcross catalog that would be cool for me to check out. And you're like, oh, check out biblical proportions issue 2, and I'm like, you have been really busy because that video went up 3 weeks ago. And yeah, we're
No,
busy,
that's
man.
great.
Yeah, we're busy, man. Just getting along
I love it.
within the comic book space as best as we could within this, as
Oh
Evan
yeah.
says, the gospel-infused entertainment space.
Oh yeah, Evan is the best writer I know. I remember when he first sent me uh his first Black Blossom book, and I think he drew it, and he's a better writer than he is an artist. So when we first seen it, I said, I don't like this, it's a girl in a pink outfit, and I'm like, I don't even know, this isn't in my wheelhouse, and the kind of stuff we put out. And he had to sell me on it. Then we got a different artist. I said, "Oh, okay, okay. All right, it's looking cooler. All right." And then, as you read along, you're like, "Wait, this is really good." And then it starts, cuz he doesn't he can pace himself better than I can with my books. With my books, I want to hit you with all the good stuff right up front, and then I start breaking it down. He'll do slow burns on things to reveal, and you have to just wait for it. But from him writing other things and other his books and other books for me, I just saw how talented he was on just uh, pacing and plotting and dialogue, and just organizing everything that happens in the story, and just making it good, just making things work. When I've told him I have this idea, I want to do this. And one of the first things that I noticed him be able just grasped instantly was in Starcross United issue 1, I wanted to do a creation of the world of Starcross, at least within our universe, and I wanted it biblical based, and I wanted it to also include some of our, character references. And I said I wanted to start like this. I wanted to kind of end like this. Can you come up with something? This is kind of what I have, and I gave him a little outline that wasn't, perfect at all. And he said, "Yeah, I can come up with something." And he just came up with an entire thing and made it very poetic and very cool sounding, like it was already in a from a book. And I said, "Well, that's really cool. I can't wait to put this out." So you've probably seen that one, where the universe is being created,
Yeah, that's
and
what I
then
call
yeah,
in the
yeah,
that was I used it. I think I used it as the opener for the even
yeah,
though it was unconnected, I used it as the opener for Biblical Proportions issue 1 review. I
yeah.
love that panel. I call it the Christian multiverse.
It's so
Straight out
cool.
of
It's
that.
so
It was
cool.
that
Yep,
was
and
awesome.
Evan actually took over for Bib Pro 2. We call it Bib Pro because sometimes it's hard
Not
to
you.
say the entire thing.
The whole thing, yeah.
He did Bib Pro 2 script. Bib Pro 1 script, I actually hired somebody to write it initially, but they were taking so long. And then when they finally sent me something, they sent me 2 pages, and it wasn't even anything that we had
Yes.
discussed. So I went, okay, forget it. I'm going to write it myself because I already know the story. So I'm just going to write it. So I wrote it, and for better or worse, that's how the first issue turned out. And then Evan said, "I'll write the other issues," and I said, "Okay, great." So he wrote 2, and then he said, "Here's 3 and 4 also." So he sent
That
me
was
all 4,
awesome.
you know. And I said, "Weren't you intimidated by all those characters?" I thought, he goes, "Oh no, I like that kind of stuff." So I was like, "Okay." So um so yeah, he just busted those out like nothing. And that's why there's like it might be a elevation in writing come issue 2, 3, 4. And I said, I want to contain it in 4 issues. Are you able to do that? And he said, yeah, I can do that. um because I didn't know how long it was going to have to be to finish up the story. And I didn't want to drag it along. I wanted to, have all the good stuff happen, because it's just it's a special, it's a special book that isn't necessarily a series, but it's a special event that we wanted to do.
See, even more bonus points to the Evan David fanboy club. I mean, I consider
Yeah,
myself
exactly.
his self-proclaimed #1 fan. He does lean into it, but
You gotta buy
yeah,
his he comic scripted the Chosen comic book.
yeah, I have to get those and review those
Yeah,
soon. And
yeah,
his writings for Elsewhere in Odyssey as well. See, guys, this is
right. He
the
also did a
certified.
novel called Eve, which is based on Adam and Eve.
I have to check those out too.
And it's a novel, so it's no pictures, just on the cover. And I haven't read it either, but I'm sure it's good.
Yeah. Yep, see, more points as to why Evan is one of my #1 favorite writer of the stuff I have discovered. But I do love Joe's. For me, Joe, your world building has been honestly a world building. How you put together your stuff within what I've covered. I only contain it to on as you know on the channel we call it the Christian fiction judgment scale, and some people always come about, well, what about Phantom Stranger or Vegetation? I'm like, this is only contained within the 60 videos, 60 comics that we have covered on the 60 plus comics we have covered
That's
on
true.
the channel, not or within Marvel stuff, or within DC stuff, just within the bubble of comics that I have covered and continue to expand. And your world building that you did with, particularly with Biblical Proportions 1, and well, I just unshamedly have to say it. I read God within the 30 minutes waiting to start this podcast, and the world building and the direction you have with those things. I really, really like it, which is what we're gonna get into with today's podcast after our both of us our fangirling over Evan David, because the guy is awesome. And the sad thing with Evan is that Evan's stuff is so hard to market. My goodness. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's an issue with you guys too. His stories are so amazing. It is hard to market. It's, it's,
Right. And
it,
I've brought that up to people before. I always say he'll tell me about a project. I'll say, "I don't like that. That doesn't sound good." And then he'll give me the script and I'll read it. I'll go, "Oh, I like it." But the initial sell is always like, "What? What? It doesn't sound like anything I would be interested in."
well, I try my hardest with his in regards to like the videos and the, for example, like the last two videos I uploaded to the channel were just podcast clips from the previous podcast, the episode 9, where I picked out my favorite hero, and
Yeah.
episode 11, yeah, I think episode 12, where I was ranking my favorite villains. And I took out
Yes.
Alison Morgan, who is my
Yes.
favorite villain
So
of
I like him
everything.
too. And I told him, so this was I think before what happens to him in that issue 5. I said, "Hey, I want to do this page which I have created now. No one's seen it yet, but where it's kind of a villain roundtable and Lord Horn calls together a meeting of all these evil, big bad guys, and I wanted him to be in that table. He goes, "Oh no, he's not going to be in there because what happens in issue 5." And yeah, so I'm not interested in. I said, "Okay, what if it takes place? What if the meeting takes place before that happens in issue 5? That would be cool." He's like, no, I'm not interested in having him seen anymore. He's just
Yeah,
done. So I'm not gonna. I'm like, but I
that
want to
he,
have him
he's
seen
indeed.
again. He's
No,
cool.
that's the kind of. Actually, this first section of the podcast. So I'm just gonna put a timestamp saying Evan David, Evan David Fangirl Club. That's this section of the podcast. Evan, the dude wrote one of the out of the 60 comics I've covered, wrote the best villain, only to have what happened to him in issue 5 happen.
Right.
I was
Exactly.
like, that is
Exactly.
just, and because of what happened to him in issue 5, is why he's
Yep.
my favorite villain. And even though I
Yeah.
thought in chopping together that video, this one, because the podcast clips have just been going for like really when I chop up stuff and put it out. I put out Evan's thing and it's like, why this? It's so hard for me to actually. I finished recording and everything, man. Like, how am I going to title this? Because I'm gonna title this, and I do my best, and it's like, oh jeez, it's but it's awesome. If you guys haven't checked it out, you can find all this stuff at over at starcrosscomics.com for references. Our links will of course be in the description below for those that are listening via the audio on Spotify. You can get the link to the blog post, which will have all the relevant links to Evan David's stuff and everything that we're going to talk about from of Joe Spicer's work today. So, as we felt, that's the end of the Evan David fangirl section because I think
Yeah.
we could go on for the rest of the
We
hour.
could. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But as you guys know, when we do interviews on the Kedoshim Initiative podcast, we ask the God-fearing creative a couple of questions regarding their source of inspiration for their work, the theological basis behind their work, creative approach, the ups and downs of their journey, and whatnot, and some questions that I've seen from comment sections that I think, oh, would be cool to ask the creator. So starting with the first question for Joe Spicer is, what is the source of inspiration behind biblical proportions and God,
Mm-hmm.
as well as Starcross as a whole? Because I believe Starcross has been running for 20 years.
Yeah, we started around 1998, if I'm accurate. Um, and back then, so I was always drawing my whole life, and some of my friends from high school, we drew also, and then as we would come up with characters, and a lot of those characters I'm still using today, since probably like 1990, the late 90s. And we always liked 90s comics and stuff like that. And as I graduated, I met other creators from different networking. This was before social media, and then we got together and we were all drawing stuff, and we said we should form a comic company. And then I had come up with actually at that time it was Starcross Studio, And we came up with the. I already had Starstruck, so I had a lot of star themes going on, and my friend and I are Christians, so we said, oh, something like a cross or something. And originally, it looked like the Texaco logo, so we didn't want that. So we kind of skewed it, and it went through different incarnations of what the logo looks like, and then we settled on Starcross, and that started gaining traction. We started learning how to lay out pages, and back then we were drawing on bristle board and cutting out zipatone and cutting out word bubbles and using a glue stick to stick them on the boards, and then we'd go to Kinko's late at night and run copies. And so that, when I say we started, that's we really started ground level. So those are books that are kind of funny looking. We didn't have computer graphics or Photoshop or anything back then, so it was a lot different. So we kept leveling up, and on the way we would pick up new creators. They were mainly local. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in the U.S. So we picked people up. Some people would drop out when they kind of just lost interest, and that's kind of how Starcross started. And once social media came about, I was meeting people, and I found that they were like-minded in my values. And my in Starcross we have three things. We There's quality, there's content. So is the quality good enough to be on the comic book shelves next to Marvel and DC? Is the content something that I'm comfortable talking to you or anybody about somebody else's book? And is the creator, you know, someone that I can work with, someone who's not ego driven, someone who is easy to understand criticism. It's funny. I'm going to say it was never a requirement to be a Christian to be in Starcross, but everybody is, and it just happened that way. It wasn't so now. So if I met somebody that ended up being in Starcross and they weren't Christian, they could still be in if they meet all the other criteria. But if their book was, say, promoting something that was anti-Christian, it doesn't have to be a Christian theme. It could be some space adventurers or something like that. And if I like it on all the other levels, I'm fine with it. But if their book starts talking about how Christianity is bad, or that Christians are bad, or this worldview is something that is in sharp contrast to my beliefs, that I wouldn't feel comfortable being behind it, pushing it. So that's kind of how I say we are a comic company made of Christians, but we aren't necessarily a Christian comic book company, because that would imply that we only do Christian comics.
100%, 100% get you on that. I know, like, it's just, I know sometimes I try to do my best with it when promoting you guys as well, on making sure not to pigeonhole you
Yep.
guys into that Christian comic book company theme, but rather I use like terms like Evan David says, which I
Yeah.
personally going to love, gospel-infused entertainment. Because when you put Christian comic book or Christian this or anything, especially in the within the entertainment world, you automatically get an extra level of scrutiny placed
Yes.
on top of it that I know is, especially in the indie space at times, is hard to jump over. But that's
Oh
awesome to
yeah. If
hear.
you start the sentence with, "Oh, it's a Christian comic," people aren't even going to open it.
I'm not even
You
gonna
know,
open it here.
so I try to lead with, well, this story is about these, kind of superheroes, kind of sci-fi. It has these elements. It has the Antichrist, and it has, Nephilim, and it has, and then I start talking about what it's about, and then they start grasping these are kind of biblical themes. But I don't say that. I'm just, I talk about what the story is. Um, and then that's just how it goes, and we want people to get into the characters and stories. I always struggled with, like, you know for a long time I struggled with the God story, with how much of this am I trying to make like 100% prophecy accurate, and how much of it am I trying to just make up out of the blue just because I like comic books. So I finally settled in because I have my own views on, you know, say the book of Revelation, and I realized just do a comic book. Do a comic book drawing from what you know, which is, you know, uh, apocalyptic themes and biblical sourcing, um, and draw from what you know for your stories. And if some things are what you believe, and if some things are more a fantastical view of that, that's fine, because that's a comic book. You know, if you were doing a reference guide to Revelation, you'd want to be, you know, 100% accurate without your tweaking. So I always say, you know, this is my tweaking to some of the fantastical elements of you know, of Revelation and such. Um, Even when I make my characters that are, you know, say, let's just say some angels or this or that, I do put in my belief process to what these beings are, what they do, and what they don't do. But I also don't get too deep into the philosophy, because, again, this is a comic book, so they want a little exposition, but they want some action, they want some cool elements to the story, some fun, some cool looking characters, and they just want to have fun reading the book and go, wow, I can't wait to see what happens in the next book. I really like these characters and this and that, you know, and then they don't necessarily take in that these are biblical themes or biblical worldview, which is what it is.
Always goes back to, as Evan says, gospel-infused entertainment.
Yeah.
Because well, I mean, hearing the story behind like Starcross, how you started it always brings me back to, well, the scripture my mom gave me when I told her I wanted to do content creation all those years ago, and has been a recurring theme on, well, a recurring like nexus point, if we have to use like a Marvel term or something,
Right.
in everyone's story is Zechariah 4:10, which is, don't despise the small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. Zechariah
Oh,
4:10
nice.
in the New Living Translation. I like that version for that particular
Oh, yeah.
scripture. And is that where
Oh,
you
that's good.
started 20 years ago, just sticking piecing together stories on Bristol boards and stuff, and now you got two issues into a whole, what I think is like 10 plus, more than 10 different creators into one book for a
Yeah.
crossover series.
So in biblical proportions, there's about 30
Why, yeah,
characters from unique
characters
creators.
popping.
And in Starcross Comics alone, we have 15 creators. So 15 individual creators who have their own series. And then I went outside and grabbed, you know, about, you know, 15 more creators that are good friends of mine that kind of fit well, and brought them in. And that's it's kind of like a thing where I'd love to work with you on something at some point. So I just took the initiative to just do this big story where we get to bring everybody in. And there's still more um, characters that are you haven't seen that are going to appear in issue
Three and 4.
3 and 4. Yeah.
So I look forward to it. Make sure guys to go check it out over at starcrosscomics.com. But I
Yep,
want
I
to,
think the Kickstarter is just ending
it's just ending.
in about 10 days. In about 10 days,
Right, yeah. So
whenever this
links,
comes out.
all important links for that would, yeah, legit. Yeah, it would be 3 days by the time this comes out. So all the links for that will be in the description. But speaking of, well, as you said, we were going over your, just particularly the theological basis of it, because, and that is something else I echo as well with the channel. It's not only about, well, me, I just love the independent space, but my whole thing with particularly explanations was birthed, well, kind of came out of just my sort of disdain for some stories that just blatantly was twisting God left, right,
Oh
and
yeah,
center. Not just by like accidental, like from the perspective of, oh well, the characters are atheists, so therefore they don't believe
sure.
in God. Is like stuff where the characters just like the author just has some
Yeah,
beef with God or
exactly. That
literally
is the case.
believes that they literally believes in whatever other higher powers or whatnot and hates Christianity and has to put it in
Yes.
their artwork.
Yes.
So so from there, from that is how like this channel is primarily geared towards those Christians who are tired of that stuff that always come in my comment section and be like, "But what you know what would be cool if we have this kind of like if we have these kind of like superhero style stories of characters that honor God and stuff." And I'm like, have you not seen Starcross Comics? And then I sort of realized that the audience base of the persons who are actually looking for those stuff versus you guys who are actually creating that stuff, those kind of comics that is just we say gospel infused entertainment is like the bridge has never been built. There's that gap that needs to be bridged where you guys have, I think how much I think I've covered over 15 stuff from you guys at this point.
Oh wow.
That is just solid. Yeah, I believe it's like 15. Well, a lot of it is Evans. I think, yeah, I
Yeah.
think, I think three-quarter of it is Evans, but stuff from, so yeah, stuff from Ken, and
Yes.
I have like three, four stuff coming in from you, and it's
Yes.
just like bridging that gap of things that are gospel infused entertainment, theologically sound fiction, and it just doesn't have to be like, because me personally, I, with my entertainment per se, I don't really want to watch something that is a adaptation of the Bible. That's me personally with
Uh,
my entertainment. I'm one that I love what the Chosen does, but I've
right.
never watched. I love what the Chosen represents, but for me
Uh,
personally, I've never watched a episode of the Chosen because I
okay.
would prefer to like sit down and read some of your guys' stuff. That's just personal preference. Not saying that, making sure because I always have to cross my eyes and dot my t's, cross my t's and dot my i's. That I am not saying that the chosen people shouldn't watch the chosen because of this, that, and the other. I don't have an opinion on it because I have not watched it. But
Okay.
all these things where it's always some kind of Bible adaptation, or always like a lot of Christian entertainment is always would people always doing word for word Bible adaptations, and that is good. I am not saying that that is bad, but it's also good to have those fantastical stories that where you read it, you're getting a solid Christian message, but also the kind of stuff that we've all like loved from Marvel and DC, where it's like the whole superhero stuff, because that's actually my next question is that you have a thing for Nephilims in all your
I
stories. And I
do. I
want to hear
do.
the like theological basis of how, like, I like how you do it, like, particularly how
Okay.
you have done your Nephilims, and I want to hear what is your what is like your the theological basis that around
Okay.
how you do Nephilims in your stories.
Okay, so Starstruck originally started off as my first superhero character, and I just made him. I was a big fan of characters like, let's just say, Cable from the X-Men. He didn't wear a mask or anything. It was just him. He was just this tough guy, and I had some costumes that I liked, and his costumes changed over the years to what it is now. And he was just this big, superpowered guy, and I had that. His name was always Starstruck, and he always had this star over his eye, and it was just a mysterious past, kind of like a Wolverine thing where you didn't really know what his origin was. And that's when I started. I was raised a Christian, but that's when I started getting into reading and studying, and I started getting big into Nephilim. So then I started reading other books on Nephilim, and some were spot on, and some were kind of all over the place. And I just started, understanding it and saying, I really want to find out what is the source for my characters' powers. Did they get these powers from an alien? Did they get this power from an explosion? Did they get this power from technology? Like, and I was trying to reconcile this, and at the time I was also huge into angels and thinking they were cool and just drawing angels and just loved the fantastical, super elements of the Bible. And I I said, how do I take my character Starstruck and put into my love of angels and 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 make that into a superhero. Okay, so then how would someone biblically, get powers, from God, and what would this be? How would he be different? How would he go through struggle? And I said, what if he's a Nephilim and he isn't necessarily an evil, Nephilim? He is somehow, but I also like sci-fi. So I'm like, okay, what if they're, somehow make a Nephilim, in a sci-fi type based modern age, and what would that look like? And I'm like, oh, this is exactly the stuff that I like. I'm gonna do that. And so he became a Nephilim. You'll notice he has 6 fingers on his hands and feet. um I just did more and more research on it, and I've come to understand it clearly now, and I understand that he might, I know there's been tales of soldiers finding Nephilim in caves in the Middle East where they're kind of like wild men. They have big beards and they're big, and they're very tough, and bullets bounce off and all this crazy stuff, and I understand, like, in times of like with David and Goliath, he had certain appearances, and he wore the armor of his day, and then you go back and you start thinking about the ancient kings, and you start thinking about Nimrod, and then the sons of God um, with the
Daughters of man.
women, good daughters of man, and all the different ways that they would have appeared as you know grasshoppers in the appearance of them. And so I kind of went back and forth and saying, like, okay, but I'm making this into a comic sense. So obviously I'm not going to make them as big as like a building, because how do you make a character, if Superman was the size of a building, how are you how are you relating to him? How is he going to have day-to-day struggles? And it would just be constant attacks, by the military or something like that. So I said, okay, he's going to be big, but not crazy big. And then I started thinking, well, maybe some Nephilim did get really big, but this particular one, is big. He's about 7'5", something like that. um, but he's not like skyscraper tall. So I said, I'm gonna pump the brakes on that, and just have him big. He's going to have powers, and he's going to explore the lineage that of his father, who was a divine being, a messenger, like an angel, is an angel, but I know angel just means messenger, so different divine beings of God have different purposes. So they're not all messengers. Some are, guardians, some are, deliver, other things than messengers. But and also most angels don't have wings. They cherubim, seraphim have wings, but regular angels don't have wings. They usually just look like people. But I understand, again, this is a visual medium and it's comics. So if you're like, oh yeah, and then he meets this angel, pretty cool, right? Oh, no wings. I didn't even know that was an angel. I'm like, oh, I think I gotta add wings to my angels, even though that's not my personal philosophy on the theology. And so there's things that you may not ascribe to, but you're doing it because it's a visual medium and you want to portray certain things. So that's the fine line of, oh, that's not what I believe happens in the end, but it would visually look cool for in the comics. So I'm going to put something, let's just say, um, because it'll work in the comic. So if I was doing a novel, if I was doing a movie or a game, it would be different. But this is a comic, so I've been collecting comics since I was a little kid. So I'm always gonna make it comic book like. That's my method of conveying my stories. Comic books. So it's always gonna come out in the end looking like a cool comic book.
Theological basis aspect, and pulling back to what I said earlier, and what I love with your guys stuff and Evan stuff, it's that bridge between, well, just that culmination of sound Christian theology where the world building 100% is on the first like if, as the Bible, all the events of the Bible happens as the events of the Bible happen. We're not trying to go back and rewrite it and say, well, what if this happened in this area and David never became
Right.
king, or that kind of like twist timeline and all those kind of things. It's that intersection of song theology with high fantasy. Because then one of the things I liked, what when I was reviewing biblical proportions too, which I think would be, I know you have a lot on your plate. I know Evan also has a lot on his plate. I don't know who else in Starcross could pick this idea up, but
Uh,
I think a really cool, even if it's a one shot or something, will be on that. Even there was two panels on that cross section between Ugg, the spirit monk, and all of them on that aspect with when they fought Hellsmite, on how you wrote that of 5,000, I think it was
yes.
6,000 years ago, that panel of how all of them teamed up together to fight Hellsmite. Just
Yes.
something, of course, it's just me spitballing off of what I was thinking while reading it, but just that intersection of, as you said, that intersection of sound theology, and as we know, there's many we look at, particularly for me personally, when I review, as and I think also with how you operate Starcross, as I think the city motto is, what it is one goal, many visions.
Hmm.
The, yeah, one goal,
Yep.
many visions is that we all have different perspectives, but once we agree on the, as I said, the main sound
Yep.
foundational, the main song foundational, so that nobody coming in and sprouting heresy. There's like a million different perspectives to Nephilim. There's a, well, not million.
Exactly.
A million is a
Exactly. Right. Right. Right.
hyperbole, of course. But there's so much perspectives to the end time, so much perspectives to
Yes.
Nephilim and all these kind of things. And it's like, those are things that I like to see in Christian fiction, on everyone's different take on it. Because it's one of those things where anyone could pick it up, anyone could make this story on it. And once it's done in a way where it isn't blaspheming God or going against what the Bible says, I love it. Because my next question is in regards to who came up with the term crossbreeds within the Starcross mythos. I've seen it in 4 different comic series of by
Oh, that's
different
cool.
writers. So I want to know
Yeah.
who was the one that coined it first.
That's cool that you brought that up. I actually wrote that in my notes to bring up. So I came up with it. It was just a play off of Star Cross, so cross breeds. I was doing a
That's
word
awesome.
search on, basically it's our version of mutants. They have Nephilim DNA. I think I have so in the back of the Starcross team up issue one,
Yes.
we have a thing that it's like a scientific document that talks about the I think I call it the like the N gene or something like that, where's the
Yeah, and
Nephilim
Gene, the
gene.
Nephilim gene.
Yeah, and that's the scientific, and then the slang term that people have used within our universe is crossbreeds, and I think it works because you think cross and you think star cross, so I think that worked. Early on, we had Luke Stone in Starcross, and he has his hybrids, and we were going to start saying, hey, we should all just universally say hybrids. And then when Luke started his own company, and then eventually after that moved to Arrow Comics, he we said, hey, we can't use hybrids, we can't use that. And I said, hold on, let me think. And I started thinking about different similar terms, and I came up with crossbreeds, and I love it more. I actually want to do a book called Crossbreeds because I like the title so much. Um, but yeah, so that's what they're calling each other. But it's kind of like, some other people might call them something else in their book because different regions are going to use different terminology. So um, crossbreeds might be the common way they're talked about, but other people might have other slang terms for superheroes that have that kind of power. And I don't want to push that on necessarily other people's
Creators.
characters in
Yes.
Starcross. If their character got their, I know like Tin Soldier and Phantom Lion, they got their powers from scientific experiment done on them,
And then
whether it
Evans,
was
Black
against
Blossom
their
is
will or willingly. And also, yeah, Alpha Red and a couple others. And so I don't want to say, yeah, you guys are crossbreeds, because even in Marvel, you see like some people are mutants and some people go, "Hey, Spider-Man's a mutant. He got bit by the spider, but it basically became a mutation, so he's a mutant." Or Namor's the first mutant, and you're like, "Well, he's Atlantean," and it's like, "Yeah, but he was a mutant because he's got those wings on his feet." So people speculate who's a mutant and who is just some kind of scientific experiment, or Captain America that got the super soldier serum, but does that make him a mutant now because it altered his genetic makeup? And you could argue that, but then traditionally, it was somebody whose their powers were released at a certain age, at puberty, and so it's kind of like that. That's the origin of crossbreeds, and I'm actually doing an info sheet that I'll probably put in a certain book, where it breaks down crossbreeds. What are they? And then the talking about that it comes from the Nephilim, and then there would be like a pure breed, which would be a Nephilim that has one you know one mom and dad who's an angel and a human, and then one generation, they're the offspring, and then they're a pure Nephilim, and everybody else is a kind of a watered down version on that. But I'm also classifying some classifications of these three that are kind of the highest level of a crossbreed because they're the most common. So they have the most consistent genetic material, and those are rifters. Those are people who can teleport, or open up portals. And those are I'm still working out the title, but it's going to be something like avian, which is winged characters who just have natural wings that grow out of their back, which we have a lot of those. And then the
Yeah.
third most common, which is going to be higher, is going to be what I call combustors, and those are people who have flame heads, so they have fire coming out of the top of their head, kind of like someone would be familiar with Firestorm from DC. Um, and those I kind of also liken them to the most angelic qualities. So like a teleportation, mean you're being in multiple places at a blink of an eye, and then you are the fire with the flaming eyes and the flaming swords and that kind of divine fire, where it's not your normal fire that you rub two sticks together, but it's more of a divine fire that comes organically, it comes naturally from your body. And then the what was the last one, the wings, obviously, so that's a no-brainer for um, an angelic quality. So yeah, I'm going to break that down on a page. I'm working on that. I don't know what book that's going to appear in, but that'll. I always like making up like informational clarifications on some of our terms that we use.
Oh no, that is great. As I said at the beginning of the podcast, out of the 60 comics I've covered and the different from the many different authors you've covered, I like your direction with world building the most. And as I
Yeah.
see why it's like I see now why even more why I like it so much and how in depth you go with it. Actually, it is see, even though you have quite few books. I mean, obviously, you have a hand in everything Starcross related,
Yeah.
which going to
Yeah.
lead into my next comment. My next my next question. I see that with just a small, like for example, biblical proportions issue 1, with the world building that you were doing with Starstruck and everything. That
Yep.
even in my review, I'm like, this this story. I remember saying that this story is it's really good, but the world building is going really great. But it tried to put too
A
much
lot.
world building into
Yeah.
one issue. And when Evan took over the series, he said that's the.
Yeah.
I remember in the podcast with Evan. Evan said, "Yeah, I told you the exact same thing you said in that review
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
It has the world building is great, but it's too much in one spot. Like we need to give Joe
Right.
some more time to cook with it. He has. I
Yeah.
understand what he is doing here, but he just needs to let it cook some more rather than all in one comic. So
Yeah.
as you
Try
say
to
with
swallow it all in one bite, in
yeah,
one
so it's just
swallow,
like
instead of slowly. We're gonna do this, then this, then
yeah,
this. Yep.
yeah. But as I said, like dude, your I just hearing that, I look forward to whatever future stuff you have coming, especially with God, God Part Two, and the next two issues of Biblical Proportions, and all those other stories you have when you eventually get the time to actually tune them out.
What's funny is I was originally going to call the book that's the G.O.D stands for the Global Order Decree. Those are
Yeah,
the bad guys,
yeah.
and I wanted to call it Starstruck, but there's a Marvel comic called Starstruck. So I said, okay, I can't call it the main character, and I always had. I came up with the title Biblical Proportions when I was still in middle school, and I thought it was a cool title, and I always wanted to use it for something, and then I wanted to use it for something bigger, something broader, something more less specific, something that would encompass a lot. So I ended up using it for this big crossover series, and but it was originally going to be Starstruck's book because I thought it kind of culminates, but I eventually settled on the name of the bad guys organization, which is the Global Order Decree, that's led by Arnenian Horn, and which means his first name means little, so he's the little horn. um and he's the Antichrist character. For the longest time I just called him the Antichrist, but I said, well, he needs a name because he wouldn't call himself that. So I came up with, little horn. I said horn would be a cool last name. What would be his first name? And I was thinking. I said, oh, what? And I think I looked up. I think it was. I think it was. I don't know if it was Latin. I forget, for little. And I liked that. And I said, oh, I'll use that for his first name. Um, and so he's a complicated character. I can't wait for. So I have a lot of books that are done. They're just not, let's say, colored or lettered yet. And God issue 0 answers a lot of cool stuff. And there's this cool intro that's going to rival that creation story page
Oh,
that
you're
that
setting
we
a
talked
high
about.
bar.
Yeah, so that one's going to explain everything to you, and it'll clarify everything that at least has to do with the stuff that I create. So I can't wait for you guys to see that. Um, that intro to issue 0 is going to clear up a lot of stuff, and it's gonna expound on a lot of the backstory. And I think did Evan help me out on that? He no 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 I was waiting for Evan to help me, and I ended up writing it, and I think it's probably the best. It's only like 5 pages in the beginning of issue 0, and I think it's some of the best stuff I've ever written. So I'm super proud of it. I'm super proud of it.
That is awesome, dear. 'Cause I think, well, echoing back to what when just echoing to when I did the podcast with James, on one of the things
Yeah,
well, one of the water scriptures for Kedoshim Studios is and what I do with Kedoshim Initiative is that Zachariah 4:10, don't despise the small beginnings of just hearing
yeah,
some of you guys, like the artist journey, or just like the creative journey. Yeah, just the creative journey of going from starting the comic all the way back like 20 years, however years ago, and now getting it together, put it out there, continuing to refine it, and just continue to refine it more and more until, like, well, you put out the first issue, it got scrutinized a lot. You've got another author writing on
yeah.
it, and now you're back to it where you're proud of it, that for another is connected within the same universe, what you're putting out now, you're saying is gonna be. I look forward to it. I'm holding your word up for it. When I do that review eventually, when I do that review eventually, I'm running this clip before I run the video.
Well,
No,
there's
but
a
that's
fine
awesome
line
to hear
in
you
being able to
guys.
there's a
Hmm.
fine line in being able to deliver the conveying of the message. So I know what all these characters are doing and saying. So if I create it, so let's say you go to the store today and you buy some milk, and then you missed your bus, so you have to get back to your house by walking down this dangerous area, and eventually you get home. And you're going to tell someone what happened to you today. So how are you going to say that? Okay, well, you need to tell it in comic book form. Okay, so first you get up and you go to the store and you go, oh, I didn't even know that was a grocery store. Is that what that was supposed to be? Or like, okay, I'm already not conveying the message right. Okay, then you got the milk and then you went home. No, no, I went down this, kind of dangerous alley. Oh, it didn't look dangerous to me. Oh, see, so I'm already not telling the story correct, and you're trying to do it in comic form. And you're like, oh, I didn't know that's what he was doing. Or, oh, well, I didn't know he was late for work because you didn't explain that. And I'm like, oh, I knew he was late for work, but I didn't explain that part of the story. So it all goes down to, are you are you giving the message correctly? Like I tell that to artists. I say, you can draw it however your style is, but if he's jumping but it looks like he's falling, that's wrong, because if everyone thought he was falling, you drew it wrong. But if everybody knows he's jumping, draw it however you want, but he's got to look like he's jumping and not falling. So if you're writing a story and nobody thinks this character is under pressure, you need to write it differently because they think it's no sweat. They don't think anything's under pressure. So you need to convey that. So just like if I know what's happening and I know why this character is doing this and saying this, but you read and you said, I didn't I didn't know that was what he was doing. So that I need to go back and fix that and make it more clear to the reader so he understands what I want him to feel in this scene.
No, that is 100%, and that's like with, as we call it the Christian fiction judgment scale. It's all
Yep.
about, well, of course, you're talking universally. Always have to bounce it back to what we do here with the explanations. It's not about bashing and tearing down. It's about critiquing and building up fellow brothers and sisters in Christ
Mm-hmm.
within the creative space. On like, because I know sometimes I can get some people send me their like baby, and I think sometimes I I review it and I feel like I only after we watching it I'm like, I hope it wasn't too harsh here because I don't review it, and then well
Well,
you
that's
guys
good
continue sending me
because,
things to bash, so of course I'm like, okay, I didn't burn that bridge with my first review.
right. No, that's good because I don't want people to think, oh, because he knows them now, he's going to be giving good reviews. I'm like, you haven't watched all his reviews, have you? They're not always
Yeah.
good. So he
Yeah.
doesn't care. He doesn't care if we're nice to him or not. He's not gonna lie about it because we're friendly with him. If he likes it, he's gonna say I like this, and if he doesn't understand this, he says I don't understand what's going on in this scene, so that threw me off.
No, 100%. That's the thing with well, when it comes to create, which leads into the next question directly regarding your creative journey on the pros and cons and just advice you have as well for aspiring creatives, whether it is faith-based creatives or non-faith-based creatives. What is like the some pros and cons that you have directly gleaned from your experience, particularly with Starcross and your series, as well as some advice you could give to as well as some advice you could give to the aspiring creatives listening. And well, I'll give you the next question afterwards.
So if the creative person is looking to start their own comic publishing house, that would be one advice. If they just want to be an artist, work for anybody on a project, that would be another. And if they wanted to be a writer, that would be another. But if I'm just going off of somebody who say wants to create a comic book, I'll just say that. So if they are planning on writing it, drawing it, inking it, coloring it, lettering it, editing it, I would recommend first thing you need some help. You need someone to edit, your script, because you can't be the only eyes reading it, because it's going to be great in your eyes. But if no one else reads it, you're never going to know if it makes sense to other people. So that would be the first thing. Have other people, someone who likes to read, someone who is a friend of yours who likes comics, who can read your script, someone if if you're already an artist, that's great. If you're an aspiring artist, you need to decide, are you good enough at this point to do a comic? Because if not, I'm not saying to stop, but I'm saying then keep keep practicing your skills. Draw other pages, draw an X-Men comic, draw a Superman comic, draw pages. Work on your pages. If you're going to be the artist of your own book, you can mess around with it, but keep improving until you feel you're ready to actually put a first issue out. Then, are you a good inker? If not, you might want to hire one. Or if you're not a good colorist, which I wasn't at first, and now I'm pretty decent, I would hire colorists. So if you need to hire out a colorist, then do that. But if you color yourself and it's really bad, that could ruin good art. Bad color can ruin good art. Bad inking can ruin good pencils. You know, um, so if your book looks really bad visually, but it's written really well, maybe you should have hired an artist. So it's really hard to be good at all these things, and I learned all of it over time. I only recently started loving my lettering. I was always I thought I was terrible at it, and now I'm just so much better. Maybe it's the advancement in the programs that we use, but I'm just good at it. I studied letterers that I really liked, and I had to decide, why do I like their lettering? What is it about it that I want to emulate to make my stuff look really great? Um, logo designs, the logo for your book. um is it you know does it look like it was created in the 80s? Does it look like you sketched it on some trace paper and just stuck it on your you know get someone who knows graphic design to make a good logo, because it's got to be legible, and it's got to be cool looking, and it's got to look like a comic book logo and not like a logo for a butter company or something like that. And if you're publishing your own book, that's a whole other thing. You have to know marketing. You have to know, social media. You have to know advertisements. You have to know how to, work with the printers. You have to know how to ship the books and receive orders and receive money and ship stuff out where it's not damaged, where it's safe, and then get the next issue out and talk to your fans, and get new fans and do conventions, and have a website that you maintain for all your books. So this is what I do. So I have to do all of it. But so if somebody was just starting off and they want to be a comic book artist and they're pretty good, there's a lot of creators that are looking for artists. And if you want to be a writer, start writing scripts. Just write scripts on books you're a fan of, or make some up. Say it was original script. Um, and if you're solid on all of that, just make your first book. Again, if you're not a colorist, then just hire one. If you're not a letterer, hire one, and then put out your first book. And you might hate it 2 years later and say, I don't even want people to see that first book. I'm gonna do a new one. But I also tell people, don't just keep making issue ones, because issue one will never be perfect enough that you say, "Well, I want to redo that one. That doesn't look good anymore." Well, you would just infinitely be making your issue one every couple of years because you don't like how it looks. You got to move on to the next issue and just reflect back on that was how you did it back then, and now you're doing it like this. You're always learning with writing and with art, and with colors. You might get a fantastic color where your first issue wasn't, and it looks different. But you need to keep moving forward, and there's times where your book doesn't sell that well, and somebody critiques it, or you see someone else's book that's so much better, and then you get down and you figure it's too much work, you're too stressed out, you want to take a break. But from my perspective, from the people that I work with in Starcross and myself, we're so passionate about it that if we were put in a prison, we would be making comics in the corner of the prison. Like, if we were on a desert island, instead of building shelter and looking for food, we would be drawing comics in the sand, and starving, because that's what we love to do. And it's the most, if we have, you know, a half day of free time, the thing we want to do with our free time is make comics. That's our happiest time. So not everyone is like that. Some people might come in to making comics and say, I want to make a bunch of money. Some people might come in and say, I think my ideas are going to be revolutionize the entire comic industry. And and then they might be really bad at making comics, but they don't see it. And I say you have to love it, that if even if everything is failing, you still want to make more. And even if you're out of money, you still want to make comics. And even if it came out terrible, you want to start over and keep making comics. So you have to have that drive where as many times as you get knocked down, you're still going to still want to make comics. And if that's you, then you will make really cool comics. But if you're like, if I fail the first time, I'm done. I'm not going to keep making it. Then it's not for you because it's too rough of a of a process. It takes a lot out of you. You're going back and forth with scripts. You're going back and forth with character development and who these characters are. They're talking. You're listening to these characters in your head and what would they say and do? What do they do next? It's like a TV show that you're remembering, but you never watched it because you made it up. And these characters are like real people that you're telling their story, but nobody else knows these characters. So it's like you're telling someone about your friends and they've never met them, and you're telling their story. Oh, he grew up like this and he did this, and at the end you made the whole thing up because you're just a writer. Um, but you have to treat these characters like real people that you want to tell their stories, and that's what it takes to be a comic creator. Those kind of elements in how you think day to day and how you exercise your creativity. And if that's you, you will get better, and your stuff. I can, if I look at somebody's stuff, I can tell they're creative, passionate people. And if I look at other people's stuff, I go, oh, they're just copying how to draw comics, or how to write. They're just copying what's been done already. Like they're just going through the motions. But this person who may not be as good, you can tell this guy is a creative explosion waiting to happen. That's what I have to say about
That is awesome advice. I think that's awesome advice for any aspiring creative within the that's looking at the podcast right now. Especially for myself, who I look up to you guys as major inspiration for my own stories as well. I mean, I literally, before I even had the name for the story down, I hit you up and said, Joe, I would like you and
that.
Evan to produce this idea that I have. I don't know where the idea is going. I have an
Yeah.
idea. I don't have a character. I don't have any enemies, but I want to make a video game, piecing it together,
Right.
and I would like you guys to piece together the tie-in comic fate, which now has
Yep.
conceptualized into parables of the set-apart deception that I started
Yep.
decoding for, and it's just like going off of what you said on like just slowly but surely getting it together, piecing it together, and as we keep referencing that
Yeah.
scripture back from Zephaniah 4:10, Zechariah 4:10, don't despise the small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. And I think from what the
Yeah.
advice you just gave, like the perfect application, I think, or based off of that scripture. Because my next question
Mm.
after the advice for creatives is, because we our kind of themes of stories is that intersection between faith and high fantasy, techno fiction, superheroes existing within a biblical worldview context. And with everything is how has your creative journey, as you said, with how has your creative journey and that advice you give impacted your faith, your actual faith in God, as you've gone through the motions? Because you guys, as you said, you guys had failed Kickstarters that you
Yeah.
guys started really excited and no one showed up. And after the entire
Yes.
Kickstarter run, it didn't get funded, and you guys have to like go back again. And even though it's awesome stories, it's like, how do you guys keep? How has that like? Has that had any kind of like impact on? How has your faith either? How has your faith, especially in God, built as you continue this creative journey of stories that you believe God has laid on your heart to produce?
So yeah, I've been saying my whole life that God wanted me to do this, and I obviously I can't speak for every other Starcross creator, but when when I have failures or when I have stress or when I have just hurdles, sometimes when producing a book, you think everything couldn't have gone more wrong on the path. The car breaks down on the way to the printer, they misprinted it, then you get the corrected ones, and then they get wet, so you don't have them in time, and then there was something misprinted. I could just go through hundreds of things, or artists disappear halfway through the book, or your computer crashes and you lose all your files of your book, or you know any number of things, and you start thinking, am I not supposed to be doing this? I've heard some of my Christian friends saying, maybe God's saying that this is not what I need to be doing, maybe because doors haven't opened, therefore I shouldn't be doing this. There's other people saying that, and I'm always the opposite. I say, yeah, but you know just because you have hurdles doesn't mean that's God saying don't do this, because the devil puts hurdles in front of you when he doesn't want you to do things also. I mean, I know stories of when people first become Christians, then all of a sudden things start going wrong in their life, and I think that's the devil trying to tell them, back out of this, don't do this, there's too much hassle, go back to your old ways. And then if you do that, then you figure, oh, I thought everything's supposed to be perfect because I'm a Christian, I thought everything is just supposed to open up to me. And I think that you get help. I always say, you know the fourth man in the fire, in the furnace, he didn't, God didn't save them from going in the furnace. He didn't stop them from being tied up. He didn't stop them from being pushed in. He didn't stop them from the door being closed, but he was there with them in the fire. So God's with you as you go through the struggles. He doesn't stop the struggles from happening. So where other people, they just have to go through the struggles in life without God, and they get depressed or they turn to drugs or they just give up. Where Christians, they are going through those same struggles, but they have a helper. So I see it as, don't think this is God saying do don't fulfill your dreams, don't create these stories, don't do that. I think it's just the struggles that come, but then you need to turn to God to say, I need help through this struggle, I need help with this solution, I need help with finishing what I started. And I think that way it helps you to go on and not to give up. But I always say, from when I was a little kid, I've been drawing comics since I was like 3 years old. And there's a reason, whether it was some kind of coping skill or if it was some kind of, hobby, but this was always my identity. So I knew this is who I was. God gave me this ability to create, to draw, to write, and that's what I loved. So I need to fulfill, utilize that talent that he gave me, and not just, sit around watching movies or playing video games or something like that. I need to do this because maybe these comics I make will help someone and save their life. Maybe the comic company Starcross that I created is going to help one of the 15 creators in our studio. You know, maybe they would have fallen into depression, and maybe they would have somehow ended tragically, but because I was there to help bring them in and publish their comic, that gave them a purpose, which that gave them confidence, which gave them an elevated life that they are happy in, instead of, things that could have failed in their life. So maybe that's why I made Starcross, and that's why I make the comics. But it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. You need to still have faith that this is what God wants you to do, and you need to honor Him by creating these, you know, books and ideas and art and all this, for Him and for others, so they can, receive these messages and this entertainment and escapism, and it'll play a part in their life, whether they're involved in the project or if they're somebody reading the project. And we need to keep doing that, as long as, that's what's on our heart, and that's what God's will is. And you just need to recognize that God isn't the one sending stumbling blocks for you to fall over on your way. um that's life. That's the devil. Those are the things of the world that just make things difficult.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. That one, well, I know I could apply that 100% for my own creative journey. So that's awesome
Yeah.
there. I
Yeah, nothing's
Yeah,
easy. You
I
need a
have no
strong
other
will.
words to
Yeah.
add there. I have nothing else to add there. That was perfect. I have nothing else to add there. On to the next, and I think our final question of
Okay.
our
All
podcast
right.
is well, last Evan did shoot me down when I asked him this question, and of course we know
Okay. I
many
probably won't.
are the plans of a man's heart, but it's the Lord's will that shall prevail. But I want to hear the man's plans, the man's heart's plans, especially like I mean, you just gave us your whole how like your whole journey of the pros and cons, the things that you were much excited about during the journey and the things that were just great disappointments that you tapped into, that your faith in God in pushing through all the obstacles to get where you are today with Starcross. But I want to know, what are your future goals that you are willing to discuss with us to create a kind of like time capsule on the podcast of where do you see like yourself or
Sure.
Starcross within 5, 10 years? Let me hear the man's plans, and let's see in by that time what God's will was.
Okay, so well, I have a lot of new books coming out. I have one that I really want to mention that is 98% done, which is called Origins, and it's every um, biblical character of the Old Testament, including the obscure ones, done in a Marvel Universe handbook style that I did all the artwork for, and it looks like an old illuminated manuscript style, and I'm really excited about that. I finished all the biographies, so I'm really excited to get that one out. We have some other books coming out that you're gonna really like. Apocalypse Run, which is a one shot, and Divine Justice, which is another one shot, and these have a lot of world building elements to them. I'm really excited about this deal we're working out with Ingram Books, which are going to have us in Barnes and Noble, Walmart, and
So,
Amazon, which will be able to, send international, where we won't even have to. So it's going to take a lot of the weight off of me fulfilling orders and sending them to the printer and, getting them out and not running out of stock, and, not worrying about, having, a lot of backstock for the orders. So when that gets taken off me, I'm going to be able to do more. I'm going to be able to help everyone else on their books. I'm going to be able to do more covers, do more art, going to be able to do more writing, going to be able to do more, just graphic work for them, and just do more comics. So I'm excited for that. Things that haven't been initialized that I would look forward to if that were the case. Like, I'm looking forward to helping you on your video game comic. Um, and I know a lot of us, there's some of the creators are trying to do movies, some are trying to do animation, some are trying to do are doing novels, but I mean, more general terms, I'd like Starcross to be just a self-sustaining comic company where we don't really have to worry about too much. It's kind of like a machine that we just put in the next comic, and it comes out on the other end into people's hands. Where we're doing less of the heavy lifting, and we're able to just keep making the stuff we love and less having to run everything out ourselves, so I just love more people to know about how to get our comics, how to get to our site and order the books, be updated, and just know what have heard of us, have heard of our books, that our books get more attention, that they're in more other forms of media, that the stories get to spread their wings and fly out, and just tell more of the stories that we want to do, and that we're able to just meet more fans and talk to them, and that they can give us feedback and just know our stories, and we just keep going stronger, with less of the hard moments of putting out comics, and where it's more of a streamlined machine, that we're just able to make these stories that are organically created from our minds, from our faith, from our our whether it's our childhood ideas, or whether it's ideas we just came up with yesterday, that these are very unique ideas that come from these individuals. They're not some algorithm that's created to make money, or just that's what's popular right now, or the lowest common denominator of what people like. We're always going to make the comics that we like, and we hope that other people like them, and we hope they share our values, and that they like our characters, and they like our stories, and they like how we make them, and that our variety of different storylines that are all usually in the same universe is something that's unique, and people always wonder, how are we able to do that? And it's the creators, it's knowing the good creators, and being able to work with them, and create something that most companies only last a year, or they crash and burn before they get to put too much out. But we've been around for a long time, and we've grown so much from when we first started. So we're so much better now. So in years to come, we're only going to get better, because I always say to people, I'm not going to stop making comics, and you know, if we lose everything, I'll just start over, and we'll keep making new comics, and we'll bring new people in, and we'll just keep going. And that's my goal for Starcross, to keep going, to keep making comics no matter what, as long as I'm going. And maybe in the super future, my son will take over making comics for me when I'm 100 years old. But I want to keep making comics forever. That's my goal.
That is awesome, and well, we would see how that goal goes in the future. As we always say, as the scripture says, many are the plans of a man's heart, but it's the Lord's will that shall prevail. But I honestly believe, Bill, my bad, I honestly believe, Joe, that from what you've just the content that you guys have out there, that is 100% achievable. I really look forward to it.
Thank
I
you.
look forward to reviewing each and every single piece of media that you put out there, especially that one with the biblical heroes. I don't know if you've seen me do. I used to do. I haven't done it in a while because of time, and with that, I like to give a lot of time towards is unsung Bible stories, where I used to pick some that I don't think that haven't done one of those in a while, but that comic would perfectly coincide with that mini series I do on the channel, where I take
Awesome.
different Bible passages and different Bible passages that don't really make sense to fit into a Sunday sermon, Really, you wouldn't really
Yeah.
hear it as a Sunday sermon, but it's like really interesting Bible stories. I used to just do breakdowns of those. And I think when
Oh yeah.
you launch that comic, I definitely would. That would definitely be a good Kickstarter back for that series. I definitely look forward to that one.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'll definitely show you.
That was awesome.
I can't wait.
Mhm. Well, man, that's it for me and questions. We've gotten through all the questions I had for you and all the questions I could have thought about looking across our comment section. And is there anything else you want to let the explanations audience know?
No, just keep following us. Go to our starcrosscomics.com and sign up for the newsletter. That's the best way to hear about new projects coming out. Follow the individual creators, which you can find on our website. That's kind of our nexus of how to find the artists, what books are coming out, what books are available, and just follow us on social media and YouTube. And we're hoping to grow on all those platforms and bring more fans in so everyone can be able to get our books. We offer them digitally as well, so we just try to get them in everyone's hands as cheap as possible and with the best quality that we're able to provide for everyone.
Yeah, that's awesome. All links would be provided for you all in the description below and in the if you click the top right hand corner of the screen because the channel is remonetized, thank God for that. we
Nice.
could outlink we could outlink via without you even having to go to the description. So in the top right hand corner of your screen, you could click it and get all the relevant links for Joe and Starcross and all the stories. So yeah, with that, that's it for the 13th installment of the Kedoshim Initiative Podcast. Joe, I do highly appreciate your time and you coming on to the podcast, and just this was an awesome conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it, man. And I'm pretty sure the
Thank you.
audience as well enjoyed it too.